Hi there. Before we get into this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you nipped over to Instagram and followed Ravens Outdoor, or if you could nip to the website, ravensoutdoor.co.uk, the home of my blog. Every time you go to one of these places, like, subscribe, or share, it really helps the visibility of the podcast. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. On this episode, I've managed to snag an amazing guest, someone who's been an inspiration to me and countless others through her career as a endurance cyclist and now as an adventure racer. It's Rickie Cotter. I'm not even going to try a preamble with this podcast. It's such a cool story. Stories like this can only be told by the people that own them. So let's just get into it. Do you want another cup of tea?
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want some more Jaffa cakes?
Halfway through, maybe.
We do. Right, so put your hand up. If you want to go for pee, put your hand up. If you want more Jaffa cakes, put your hand up, all right?
Easy.
So, we just had a discussion about what I was curious about, where you came from, because you popped out of the ground as a cycling, endurance cyclist. Whether you'd consider endurance 24-hour now?
Probably not.
Based on your history, what is it, like maybe 12 years now, something like that? You've been...
It's been a while.
Been at it, yeah. So, can you just let us know, for people that don't know, how did you end up at this table? What's been your journey to how people would know you now?
I would say I'm an accidental athlete because I never... Well, my history is I grew up in children's homes, and at the age of about 10, I left my real parents and I lived in big homes with multiple people until I was 16. And it was as hard as you'd imagine it to be. So the foundations of sport were never there. I mean, we weren't even allowed outside.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
It was very, very restricting. It was like almost prison for me, because even at an early age, I was drawn to the outdoors. I don't know why. The wind, in your hair, like just being outside, I needed it and I couldn't have it. So when I was 16, it became practicality that I was riding to and from work, because I never learned to drive, or I didn't turn 16, your parents buy you a car, you do your driving lessons, you go to college.
Allegedly, yeah.
None of that.
Right.
It was a case of, right, go and get a job on the bins, and I'm going to cycle the 10 miles to the...
On the wagons?
On the wagons,
oh, really?
on the
Right,
back of the wagons.
Wow.
And I'd just cycle there, to and from at 6 a.m. and just be outside all day, getting hammered by the weather. Really physical job. And I am tiny. I'm like 5'2", with all these like
big
hairy blokes, and I'm hanging off.
Bin man tropes.
Yeah, and there was no rules back then, so you could hang off the back of the wagon. People used to break their legs and stuff. It was ridiculous. And we'd be hanging on in the back, getting sort of like, blasted by wind. But it was practical that I was riding to and from.
How far?
I think it was 10 miles to the bins and back.
10 miles each way?
Yeah, each way.
Oh, wow.
And then do a bin round. And then
Gears on your bike, or?
Gears.
Gears on your bike.
And a road bike as well.
On a road bike, all right.
23 mil wheels.
Wow.
23 mil tyres.
Wow.
It was rough. It was rough. So I just naturally became robust, because I was outside all the time. I was getting battered by the weather, by the job, but I had no choice. I needed money to survive, Yeah. And it set the foundations for what I could be. The problem was, I then discovered weed. and I kind of fell into the hole.
Yeah.
And as much as people probably don't want to admit it, quite a lot of people have fallen into that hole.
Oh yeah. I can relate.
Yeah, and you
Relate.
and you lose. I don't know if I want to call them the glory years, but you lose a lot of time, going down that road. And it was an easy tool to forget history. Is just smoke and forget the things that were tricky, and my life was like going down, this dark path, and I couldn't get out. It was consuming me. I felt like all my choices were bad. I felt like I was just like losing control of everything. I wasn't moving forward, and I couldn't get out. And I would honestly go as far as to say that bikes and the outdoors like saved my life. Basically, it changed my trajectory like 180. And then all those negative traits I had, the anger from growing up, mostly the anger. Yeah, I was just an angry ball. Right. Once I learned to channel that, I was an absolute weapon.
Yeah.
Because all the anger, all the frustration, all the things I couldn't do, I just channeled it.
Yeah.
I had nothing to lose. I was at the bottom, Alan. I was at the bottom. And I was like, I'm either going to go down and never come out, or I'm going to change my life and I'm going to get in that rocket and I'm going to fire myself to space.
Just use it.
Yeah, and use it and channel it and stop using my past as an excuse.
That's interesting. I think that's a trope that a lot of people can fall into.
Yeah,
and it's I think it's totally valid as well for some people. Everybody's experiences are different. So when you were talking about like not making good choices, what drove your choices? So before you found the bike or a way to use the outdoors that you always want to go to, what was driving your choices? Was it peer pressure? Was it inclusivity? Was it weed?
Well, I was just so angry at history, and I didn't know better almost. I didn't know, first of all, that there was another choice. I thought, my life's been defined. How am I ever going to get anywhere? I've never been to school. Mm-hmm. I went to primary school, and due to like moving around all the time, I didn't go to comprehensive school. So in my head, I felt like I didn't know how to be anything else. My life was very physical, like physically aggressive. And everything that I dealt with aggression, And because I'm small as well, and it was easy to be sort of, taken advantage of because you're just like a 5'2" woman. And I always felt like I'm going to impact everything hard and angry and fast. So all my choices were based around anger.
Right.
And you can't move forward with that. And someone said to me once, Rickie, you always, no matter what, have a choice. Like there is a choice. You might not see it because it's clouded in anger, but you have a choice. It's up to you to walk down the other path and take the other choice. So when I started to change the way I was behaving, I had to consciously ask myself, is this the right thing I'm doing now? In the most basic terms. And I had to choose to not be angry and choose to sort of take a stand back and think, well, how am I going to do this differently?
So no role models, no one to look at and kind of go, this is where this ends up if I do this. It's almost completely blind. If I can take you back to just being in these sort of typical mass occupation sort of kids' homes, what was the so firstly, what was the sort of ratio of male to female in that and how would that impact the way? How did that impact the way that you were able to just live your life? I mean, what was the ratio there with the people that looked after the place and the people that lived there?
Well, quite often it was predominantly female. You'd have a couple of young guys, but it wouldn't work. When you've got that many, young females in one place, and most of the staff were female as well. And I don't know whether that's down to in the care sector, maybe more females work in the care sector because you might be more empathetic as a woman. I mean, I know that's a sweeping statement, but generally, if you look at the health sector, when it comes to nursing, things like that, you tend to find it is a female-filled role for various reasons. But my way of dealing with that was, I don't want to be here, and I was really physical, and that's what I knew. I wanted to be top dog, So I would do that by being rough and being aggressive, and you get a whole lot of children that have been through trauma. So all our mechanisms for coping and communicating aren't there.
Yeah.
So basically, we used to have some like epic fights. We used to run away. I got from London to South Wales in a 1 hour with no money. I had no shoes on going through the tube station and got to Paddington and hid in the luggage compartment. Got all the way to South Wales. I was like a legend in the home. They were like, yes, Rickie, that's like, hundreds of miles. And I arrived on the doorstep in South Wales and the police were already waiting.
Why did you do that? Was it some sort of competition?
I didn't want to be there.
How far away can you get with no shoes on?
Home was crap, but I wanted to go home.
Right,
I hated being in London. I'm from South Wales. I've never been to the England.
The England,
we used to call it the England because we'd
there is a London.
We're like, I'd never seen like anyone who wasn't white and Welsh. Right, and then I'm in, and then I'm in like North London, and I'm like, I just want to go home. I don't understand it. So. Busted out. So
your attitude there with that whole anger thing, and that it wasn't a result of being in a minority from a boys and girls point of view in a mixed home. It really was just, I want to dominate. Yeah. And I want to be the scrapper, and I want to be the
don't mess with me. Don't take my stuff.
Is this like almost like I want people to kind of
leave me alone.
Fear and respect, and I want to be isolated.
It was survival.
Sort of stuff.
For me, it was survival. I was so out of my depth that the way I was going to control this situation was by letting people know, like, don't fuck with me.
Yeah.
Like, don't nick my stuff. You're not taking my bed. I'm in the shower next. Don't take my food. It was just a case of like, it was cutthroat. Right.
So did that end up physically? That sounds like that must have ended up physically.
Oh my God, I got kicked out of so many places.
Right, wow.
for just scrapping.
Yeah.
I just didn't know, and there's nobody to say, don't do it. They used to try and sit us down for therapy, and again, I would just be like, don't tell me how to be.
See, that's interesting. What decade was this? Would this be the early 90s?
Yeah.
Because I think in my other job, we work with a lot of schools and sort of halfway houses for boys and stuff like that. They take them out mountain biking and stuff like that. And that, for certainly the last decade, maybe two, there's been role models put into these places, and they've encouraged the kids to go karting and fishing and canyon and mountain biking and stuff like that. And it's gave them at least some sort of idea of what mentorship might look like, or a different life might look like. It sounds like just they were basically keepers.
Yeah, it wasn't physical enough. So what you're talking about, I think, is the key. Because we were young people that couldn't necessarily focus, being physical is ideal, because when people are outside, the attention isn't on you, it's on what you're doing. So if you take a group of youngsters that are struggling to sort of melt into society or struggling to get, focus, if you sit down and talk to them across a table, it's not going to work. If you take people out for a bike ride, the intention is to do the bike ride. And then if you happen to be discussing things and making plans and questioning behaviours as you're doing that activity, it's much easier to get to the crux, get to the real stuff, I find. But there was none of that. It was like sitting across the table with a middle-aged guy with a massive pot belly, who's like, how is he going to relate to a 10-year-old girl?
Sure.
I just felt like it was no place to also expose my feelings and make myself more vulnerable.
So what kind of avenues did they, avenues. What do you get? What kind of impression did you feel that back then that as a 10-year-old, what were your options? What were they telling you? So to make a question clear is the people I was talking about before, they're sitting down and go, do you want to go karting? Do you want to go mountain biking? Do you want to do this, or do you want to sit down at the table and talk about your feelings? it sounds like a parole hearing almost, something
honestly,
like that, and
it was so trapping.
Yeah, but what was the aim of that? What did they think was going to happen?
Well, I don't
after
know.
that?
I don't know, because I just threw things and never turned up and ran away. So I was the worst patient possible.
Yeah.
I was like a clinical psychologist's nightmare.
Right.
Worst case scenario, we'll drop this little tiny Welsh bomb on a sofa and watch
Right.
what happens.
The Rickie bomb.
But I didn't understand the process, and what that reinforced to me was like, I don't fit in.
Sure.
I'm not normal. I'm not ready for society. I'm different to everyone else. That's what it reinforced. And, I think in a way, because it made me feel like that, as an adult now, I'm not afraid to be different because I've always felt different. So people think I'm mad. If I say to people, right, I'm going to fly to so-and-so, I'm going to fly to Canada, for example, and I'm going to cycle to Mexico. People think you're nuts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yep, nothing new there. Yeah, nothing new there.
Yeah.
People just think, oh, you're bonkers. I'm going to go and I'm going to run, try and run 100K. Oh, you're bonkers. Yep. Yeah. It's not new.
Well, it's all relative to them, isn't it? But the fact is that you are in a low percentile category.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
It is great. It's brilliant. It's why we're sitting here. It's an interesting journey, and it's interesting things that you do.
But that's okay to feel
absolutely
like you don't fit in. It's such a blessing. But in society, we look at it and we're like, right, you've got to fit into society. You've got to do that. You've got to have a 9 to 5. You've got to have 2 children. And you've got to pay your mortgage, drive a nice car, and you've got to just fit in. Well, do you?
It's funny how people relate to people. We talked before, just very, very briefly, about the difference between like being a mentor and being held up and eulogized, and actually your sometime discomfort with that, if that's okay to say, because these were just things that you do.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily done for a purpose, although you've been parts of organisations like Venture Syndicate and stuff like that who have a really, really good sort of ethos, and you're 100% behind all that stuff and in inverted commas. But there must be a part of you, and it's clear from what you were just saying there that actually this is just me, and probably the majority of it sounds like you actually just want to be left to get on with that at the end of the day. I
do it for me. I do the sport and I do the races. The byproduct is that I have information that can help people, because I've done it so long and I've done it so extreme that I do end up with information that I can share and help. And I'm happy to guide people down that road. But ultimately, my purpose for what I do is entirely selfish. I do it because I find such peace and the happiness in the challenge, and I do it for me, and I also do it to stay well, because I know that the more outside time I have, it's my thinking time, it's my downtime, it's my quiet space. So as well as it being a racing, aggressive channel of energy, also, if I go hill walking for 3 days in Noida, I'm like a changed woman when I come back. I'm zen,
right?
And that is entirely for me, and I won't tell anyone about it. And I might have had some really tough times out there, but it's mine.
Sure. I think if more people maybe admitted that they were doing stuff selfishly, and actually, so that's really good to hear. Somebody sitting there, somebody who is, whether you like it or not, respected, looked up to, probably some people find it quite intimidating just because of your capability in general.
I find that hilarious.
Then there's tears of, well, she's a woman and she's 5 foot and she's whatever, and then there's tears of infinite regression of like, this is why I don't really want to go on a bike ride with this person or go to Noida for 3 days. But I think it's really, really good for those people to hear that actually I do this for me, because in the oddly, this will appear on social media, but in the social media sort of era where everybody needs to tell everybody what they're doing, and I'm guilty of it as well, I'm sure when those people are taking those photographs and doing these things, they are doing them for themselves, but the need to share afterwards is a separate thing. I mean, you're not... A normal person wouldn't go to one of these places just to film it, but they would.
But I think some
bring
people
the
might.
Experience back. Some people do, yeah.
Yeah. And that's the worry. That's the danger of social media, I think, sometimes.
I think comparison is...
I'm kind of worried about the way people use social media, because it's like a collection of manipulated truths. And I see it, and I see so many vulnerable people being taken advantage of via social media. Yes. And you need to strip away all that crap and understand the outdoors doesn't do social media. Like, you don't need that. Like, you don't need to take your phone if you go into the mountains. It's like key safety kit, but turn it off. Yeah. Like, just be in the moment, be present, and do it for you. And if you want to share it with you. Invite the people you love. Invite the people you want to spend time with, and share it in the real time moment. Yeah. And don't, it doesn't need to be lived through social media.
I've had a couple of those times. I think it's just I'd like to say that we've grown up with social media because it's been prevalent. I mean, for the last 15 years, it's quite a long time, and it's everybody's got sore necks from their phones and what have you. I mean, at 40 and 50 years old now, some
injuries have increased.
Exactly. So it's a tough one. I stayed off of Facebook for a long time before I went onto it. I just didn't understand it. But I own a business and I do this, so there's a necessity there.
Therein the lines are blurred.
Yes, I would love to actually not be on Facebook. It's a distraction, but you have to have a Facebook personal account to have a business account so I can make a living. Yeah. So they get you. I mean, I've deleted the app off my phone when I'm on holiday and stuff like that. But I do remember one time I went up Carnmore Jerrig and I did a night traverse of the CMD.
Lovely.
And it was amazing. And I got to the top of Carnmore Jerrig itself, and on the pinnacles, and the moon was in between. You could see right over to
I'm there with you right
now. And I got my phone out and went and took a picture, and I said out loud, let's just save this one for you.
Yeah.
In my head, I was going, it's never going to come out.
Yeah.
What's the point? It's just going to be a black.
It's yours,
And it was incredible. And I never actually took a photograph that whole night. And I just decided that I was going to put my phone away. Yeah. So, it's important to some people. It's some people's living. It's some people's coping mechanism as well, we should say, is to be able to spread their experiences and what have you.
Yeah. But it's very dangerous,
I think, as well.
Because I have probably two people in my entire life that I could phone up and really say how I'm feeling no matter what. Just two people where I'm willing to share those things that are like really important to me. And I want to do that with real people face to face. And I worry with the internet, when you reach out to someone on the internet, their motives of response to you may not be positive because they don't know you. They don't know you, they don't know your circumstance, and they may not advise you in a way that's correct for you because they don't know your history.
Sure, yeah.
And I feel like, say, for example, if someone posts a comment about body image and how they're struggling with their body image, and then underneath, so an influencer posts a conversation about body image, and underneath in the comments, you're getting a lot of people talking about a lot of personal, potentially risky things about themselves. And then the influencer's job is to respond to that. And they do that to boost numbers. Not because they care about how you feel, but because they personally need to boost their numbers. It increases their market value and, it benefits them. And I worry about those people underneath who are commenting. And there's some really hard emotional stuff that's really personal. And I say to those people, reach out to real people around you, those who love you, and they will advise you correctly. And I worry that people who are then influencers are taking advantage of vulnerable people. And that's my worry with social media. It's not real.
I think anything that's that elicits a response is valuable in that medium. So everything's commoditized.
Yeah.
So I write about my mental health in my blog and stuff like that. It's a lot of it's catharsis.
Yeah.
And who am I? So it's almost like live journaling. And because I've had a lot of benefit in actually over the last year or so of actually talking to people face to face, and kind of a lot of me wants to write that stuff so other people might see a little bit what we were talking about before is people don't see it in me. They don't know anything about me. They don't know my history, which isn't particularly mega traumatic, but for me, there's problems there that have gone on for years. Having been diagnosed with something in the early 2000s that I knew had been there my whole life, and why. And I genuinely, I've no dog in the hunt apart from I'd like people to know that this is okay. It's a thing, and even in somebody that you don't see it in, it can be happening, and I find value in that, but it's not commoditized. But I think you're absolutely right. So I'd put a blog up the other day, and I'd used a certain hashtag in it, and I got 4 automatic responses. Promote it. It literally said promote it on mental health matters or something like that.
But the difference is, Alan, your journey, you're able to look at yourself and you've assessed yourself and you've recognised something and you've started the process of trying to make it better. So you're already further down the road than perhaps those people that might comment.
That's right. I'm quite comfortable with it now. Yeah.
And you've already reached out to those people to start that process of not recovery, but the process of, well, maybe recovery, the process of learning how to manage it, recognising it, moving forward. Sure. You're in a position where you can recognise that, I need the real people. I need, people around me that love me. I'm going to go to so-and-so for advice. You're in a position where you're making the right steps for you. Whereas I think some people would rely solely on the response from that person, and that's wherein the danger is.
I think you're right, but that's well, you see nature and nurture. That's modern nurture of the mobile phone and the ping and the bong and the red dot and what have you. So that's a replacement for attention, and I wholeheartedly agree with you in the positive that we need to seek out and we need to go to people face to face and
find our own mechanisms for coping.
Yeah,
if I'm having a really terrible day, I'll have the best interval session you can ever imagine on the bike because I'm going to go to it and I'm going to hurt myself in a really healthy way. Well, some may say it's not, but in a constructive way, I'm going to just pound it out on that bike. And that's one of my coping mechanisms, and it works if I'm happy as well, because I actually now just do that for fun. But it's about setting those mechanisms, having coping mechanisms, real ones, not internet-based, and being able to turn to them, as soon as you need them. And I think we all need to learn that regardless of how we've been brought up,
So let me take you back to that then, back to that growing up stage. So your coping mechanism back there was really just to cover your eyes and ears and just go and just let off a Rickie bomb, as we called it before. So how did you find your way out? So I'm not going to biking straight away. I'm talking more of a physical, from an admin point of view. Is what was your way out? When the last door at a kid's home hit your arse?
Yeah.
What did that look like, and why did that happen?
Oof, that was like falling off a cliff face first, with a never-ending bottom. It was kind of like the money's run out, you're 16, get at the door. And I hadn't...
Really? That? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I ended up, I think the first place I lived, I was in a bedsit with something like 12 Eastern European guys, and I had this tiny room and we shared a bathroom, and it was rough as hell. Like, honestly... I mean, it was just so rough.
You have a similar age, or was it?
Oh, God, no. They were just... I don't know what their circumstances were.
Right.
But I was, 16 with all these grown guys. And it was, looking back, it was pretty high risk. But I was mostly annoyed because they used to eat my ham out of the fridge.
So easy though, right?
And I was like, right? I was like, who's eating my processed ham? I was like, I've got 10 quid to spend on food a week and I bought this ham to have my sandwiches, and there's some git is eating my ham, and it was stuff like that used to be really annoying. And then I lived with an alcoholic woman. I lived in a loft.
Is this in London?
No, this was then, the last home was in the Cotswolds.
Oh, right, okay. Nice.
Very civilised. Oh my gosh. So much cider and Laurie Lee, who wouldn't believe. You know, it was very civilised. But she used to do things like, leave all the doors open and arrive in the middle of the night and leave the hob on with a boiling pan. And I was upstairs, you know. So that was just like, brutal. You know, it was just like, what drama is going to happen now? But I got a job in a leisure centre because I was like, great, there's a cafe. So I'll eat all the out-of-date food.
Yeah, good.
Great.
Yep.
I'll get a gym membership and I'll get a hot shower. Fab. So that's what I used to do. So then I advanced from the bins. I went as a cleaner in the leisure centre. Then I thought, well, I think I can swim.
Right.
I think I can be a
swimming
lifeguard.
pool right there as well. You got shower, you got food, you got a job,
right.
You got a swimming pool.
Very logical.
Yeah, good.
So then I thought, right, I'll swim and I'll become a lifeguard. So that's what I did. And then I went into the bike shop one day with a puncher because I was riding to and from work. And I said to this old guy, I've got a puncher, can you fix it? And he said, how far are you cycling? And I said, 10 miles a day. And he says to me, come and ride round the block with us. Come on a bike ride. I thought, okay. It was 60 miles. and they were pushing me. Shane, his name's Shane, the guy who owns a bike shop. So him and his nephew, Shane and Rickie, they pushed me round this loop. I ate all their food and I was just hanging. And I loved it. I was like, great.
Where was this?
This was in the Cotswolds.
In the Cotswolds again, right?
Yeah. And the next summer, he said, we're going to the Alps. We'll take you. Oh. And we're driving out. Do you want to come? Me and my wife, we're driving out with his nephew, Rickie, and we're going to go and we're going to ride all the cols of the Tour de France. And I said, yeah, I'll come. And I don't know why this old guy, if you look at it on paper, it doesn't make sense. Old guy in bike shop, makes friends with young girl, but what it was a community and they were all odd as well. So I fitted into the oddness.
Right, okay.
They were like, cool, it's just another odd person. Uh-huh. And I went to the Alps and I sat on the petrol station and the first time I saw the Alps, I cried because I was like, hell, this is incredible.
Let me stop you there. Okay, I did the same thing.
Right?
I admit it, I went 3,000 metres at Lavinia, looked over to Switzerland, and I had a moment.
Yeah, too.
Sorry to interrupt, but I can totally relate to that. Being an outdoors person my whole life, the first time I saw the High Alps, I was overcome.
Yeah, and I can't tell you why. Because it's effectively just a snowy, pointy thing in the distance.
I was like...
Yeah, right.
Jen's like rubbing my shoulder.
Do you know what it is? It's because that signifies possibility. That hill just signifies potential, possibility, and it just blows the doors off. Yeah. And that then, for me, was just like... That changed my life. We camped in the van. I had no money. Actually, I don't even remember paying petrol. Like, I think Shane literally paid the fuel. He paid for all the campsites. I don't even think I bought him a coffee,
right, really?
And he did it for nothing. He did it maybe because he saw some potential in what I could do. And I'm forever grateful for that.
I think that's forgive me, that's easy to look back on and make that statement. Yeah. At the time, you must have... I put words in your mouth here, but that seems like an overwhelmingly, comparatively, like amazing act of kindness and generosity that you wouldn't have necessarily experienced before. So at the time, I mean, it might just be that Rickie of that time went, yeah, fuck it, let's go to the Alps with these guys.
Well, that's what it was like. I didn't really think about it.
So there was no sort of suspicion or quid pro quo thinking or anything like that.
No, he didn't. Do you know what? He couldn't even sell me bikes because he would just give me stuff and just give me bikes. And I think what he was just trying to do is just encourage the love of cycling, because no matter what would happen thereon in my life, I would always have bikes. And you might go off and you might go to uni or you might start a job or you might fall out of love with cycling or the outdoors for a bit, but it's always there. And he just kind of... ever so slightly just nudged me towards, okay, just try it. Try more. go further, try harder, look at this, you know, here's a bike. The first time I rode a 24-hour World Championships, I didn't have a full suspension bike, right? And Shane says to me, I tell you what, we'll put the C-post down on mine and you can take my bike. So he gave me his full suspension carbon mountain bike to fly to Sydney, right? And to go and do this World Champs on his bike. And so he didn't even make any money out of me.
Are you still in contact with that family then? Are you?
Yeah.
Wow,
yeah.
That's incredible. And do you see them personally? Are those people that you see?
I don't see them often, but we occasionally speak on the phone and cross paths. We've kind of gone down our own lives, and it's only now when I look back, I realise that he was probably one of the first genuine adults in my life to push me the right way, you know, to encourage me the right way. He was genuinely, I probably met him when I was 16, and, you know, they're a really odd bunch. So I fitted in and they wanted nothing from me, you know.
So I asked you a question that led to that, but do you, outside of this conversation, do you feel like that was that seeing that behaviour in other people had an influence on the way that you maybe think towards other people? That seems quite a lead-in question. But it
was really pivotal, but I was still consumed with darkness. I think the darkness still kind of at that age was overpowering me as a person. I think I got arrested once and my house was raided. And so I got arrested. I was in Crown Court. And I remember being in Crown Court.
Wait a second. Back up.
Okay.
Right. Your house just doesn't get raided. So let's go to what everybody's going to want to know. So you need to get a warrant. Mm-hmm. What was the warrant for?
Well, if you're going to do something, it's best to do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability.
Right, okay.
Even if it's in relation to cannabis.
Okay.
So I obviously was struggling to make money. And I, you know, had a very good client base established. And I thought, okay, this is going to... Oh, and I worked in a nightclub, so I had a captive audience also. And I needed to make money. And that's how I chose to do it. It's a really bad idea. So one thing led to another. Things got out of hand. Who knows why they decided it was, you know... You just don't know how they end up at your door. But they end up at your door. And carnage, absolute carnage. And then eventually I got to the cell where I was going to court, and it was as clear as day right then. It was like a lightning bolt to the head. And I was like, I do not want this to be my life. Like, this is not who I am. This is not... I'm going down. I'm going down here. Yeah. I'm going to be stuck inside for the rest of my life if I keep doing what I'm doing. And I was thinking about when that guy said to me about having a choice. And I was like, my choice is right now. And then from that day on, I changed everything. I moved from where I was and, you know, obviously stopped smoking weed, selling weed. And I dove straight into cycling. And instead of every time I was angry, I just kept biking. And I kept biking further and further and further. And that's how I ended up keep cycling, you know, 200 miles before I knew it. And then I thought, okay, I might just enter a 24-hour race, see what happens. National champs. What have I got to lose? Absolutely nothing. And it gave me a focus. It gave me purpose. And that's when I just went on the path. And then the path just was like, oh, this is great.
Funny how ending up in a cell will focus your mind, isn't it? That's the loss of liberty, the loss of a living, the loss of that outdoors that you're beginning to.
It just wasn't me in my soul. Like, I had so much more fight in me, and I was like, my fight is in the wrong place. Yeah. You know, and even if I don't fit into society, that doesn't matter. But there's something better than this out there.
Well, that's when you can employ that selfishness. You know, if you're not hurting others and if you're not having an impact on others, you can be selfish and be productive for your own well-being. So let's bring it up now.
Yeah.
So we're biking. So that's the first mention of a race.
Yes.
And we've managed to get here without me bringing it up. So that's cool. So see that segue? It's amazing. Yeah. So that was the national
24 hours.
24 hours.
Yes.
Which
Newcastleton.
Which went how?
It went very well indeed, because I looked at on the website to enter the race. They had a picture of the national champs jersey, and I looked at that and I thought, I want it. Like, that's my goal. I knew nothing about training. So what I did was I just did lots of everything. So I totally would have overtrained. And I just rode, and I thought, all I know is cycling. So I cycled and I cycled and I cycled. And I did some hills, and I did, some intervals, some sprints, and I just cycled. And I rocked up there, and I thought, can I actually do cycling for 24 hours? Can I? And then I just cycled. And I ate, and I drank. And I ate, and I drank. And that was my entire process. And about halfway through, I got into the lead, and I thought, oh, God, like, can I handle this? Like, literally, I've never gone beyond 12 hours. And I was so focused, and they'd put the jersey on a mannequin in the pit area. So every time I
what
came...
you could have won.
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how much do you want this then? What are you willing?
Brilliant.
And I just went and I went and I went, and I've never been so broken in my entire life. And I won that jersey. But what came with that jersey was the winner got a ticket to the World Champs in Sydney.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So then all of a sudden, like, I felt like a fake it till you make it. I was like, I haven't got a clue.
You just rocked up and...
I don't even know what I'm meant to be eating or drinking. I just rode. And then I got this ticket, and then I was like, well, that's lovely, but I can't get to Sydney. Like...
So was it just an entry fee?
Yeah.
Sorry, an entry fee, just an entry?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I was like, well, I can't get to Sydney. But great knowing that I could have.
Yeah.
So I went back to work, and I was working for a ladies-only painting and decorating company that was run by Cotswold mums. Yeah. So quite,
It's pretty niche.
It's niche, but it worked. Niche. Lovely, again, really pivotal women in my life.
Really, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, really. I don't know how they coped with me. Like, I don't know. I used to fall asleep at work, and they were just, they took me under their wing, they let me fail, and they did a raffle of really high-end prizes. Really high-end prizes.
It's Cotswolds after all.
Yes. And they raised the money to basically fly me to Sydney.
Wow.
And I was like, ooh, I better train hard. Because these people have just, like, gone out of their way, because they believe in me, to get there. And they put a little balloon on my front doorstep saying, well done. And it was a bloody balloon. But that balloon there said to me, they care. And that was the first time I'd really felt like loved, almost. These people cared so much. They want me to go to Sydney. They believe that I can do this. And basically, I went to Sydney.
That validation is so important. I think a lot of people don't think about validation, but that's a second act of huge kindness.
Yeah.
For somebody who's, quote unquote, just rolled up off the street.
Yeah.
Can I fix a puncture?
Yep.
Explodes into this lifelong friendship.
Yeah.
Have you got a job painting? Explodes into this journey that sends you across the world.
And these women, honestly, I honestly don't know how they put up with me. I was so rubbish. I felt like I was like, sometimes at work I couldn't focus, and then sometimes I would probably be a bit late, and then sometimes I wanted all the days off to go cycling. Then I'd go and do a race and fall asleep behind a door at work, and they're like, where's Rickie for the last 3 hours? Oh, asleep behind the door. I was just like rubbish, but they just kept scooping me up and pushing me forward. They were like incredible women to tolerate me.
Was this before you were doing the team racing and the 24 hours and stuff? When would this have been?
Yeah, so this was just as I was starting on that path.
2008, 2009, something.
Well,
I got my dates wrong.
I was born in 86, and I was with them for a long time, and I think I started with them when I was 18. So maybe it was 04 or something.
Right, that early, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Had you been abroad before? You'd been to the Alps, obviously.
I'd been to the Alps.
No family holidays come with kids' homes? No.
No. Great idea, though.
So, was that the second time you've been abroad? Or was that
yeah.
So you went to the Alps?
Yeah, and then went long haul to Sydney.
And then you went to Sydney.
Yeah, I mean...
Culture shock, just like...
Yeah, not a clue.
Yeah.
It was great. It was just like, oh, it's sunny and it's hot. And I stood on the start line and they name-called all national champs. So you had like, the Australian national champ, French, American. And I looked down the line and I'm like, holy shit. Like, what am I doing here? Like, I couldn't believe it. I was like,
I can actually imagine that, just seeing all these polished racers and
with their tidy
sponsors and their white socks.
Oh, I didn't have a clue, and I was so scared. And it was a run start, so you all had to run.
Oh, like a Le Mans start, you run for your bike.
In SPDs, you can imagine it. It was like dunk, 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 dunk. And then it was just elbows out, and I was like, oh, this is vicious. Let's go. It was a total buzz, and I just got absolutely hammered in the sun, I got carried off the bike. I've got the best photo where people have got one arm each and they're carrying me off this borrowed bike.
You've done 2 Wembos, haven't you?
I've done 2 Wembos, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, have I done 3? I've done 3.
You've done 3? Mm-hmm. You've podiumed 2 of them?
Yes, so I came 9th in Sydney, and I thought, this is cool. Like, I can do better than that.
How big was that field? Can you remember?
I think there was... I can't remember. No. I cannot remember. It didn't feel hugely massive. I think the field in Finale, because the next World Champs was in Finale. Before Enduro ever came to Finale, they had the World 24 Hours there. And it was a vicious course because it was stony. So it's
a savage place. I haven't been, but I know it's
steep,
rocky.
Rocky, and it suited a punchy riding style. Mm-hmm. So I went there a year older with a year more experience and managed to podium there. So it was...
Where was the other one?
And the other one was in Fort William.
Oh, right, okay. Was that when it was Relentless?
Yeah, I think Relentless.
Relentless was the Wembo one year, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I went there with the intention to win because I'd had 3 years experience then. And I went there with the intention to win. And I made a critical error at 1 a.m. where I had doubt that I could hold that pace.
Right.
And that doubt was enough for the other competitor to just build a lead that I couldn't catch at 6 a.m. So I think I could have won that race had my psychology been stronger.
That was a mental bonk then, not necessarily.
Yeah, it wasn't physical because at 6 a.m. I was still punching out really consistent lap times. But I had a wobble in the middle.
I looked at your lap times.
Did you?
Yeah. They were pretty good. Like the first 7 or 8 laps were like clockwork. Really. But your drop wasn't that bad. It wasn't a cliff. But like you say, when you're working with world-class athletes, they see it. They look at the timing board. They see you physically. They see your stops. They see you, and they know, don't they? It's what they do. Like
anyone who wins deserves to win. Nobody wins easy in the long stuff.
Yeah.
And everybody I've raced against that has beaten me has deserved to win. Mm-hmm. And Kate, her name was Kate, who beat me in the Fort William one. She deserved to win. She held strong. She was a mess at the end, and she deserved to win. And I respect that. Yeah. So that's sport. But now, Alan, I have this World Championships medal, and I use it as a tea cozy, like a tea coaster, to put my teacup on.
Okay.
Because I want to remind myself every day it's just sport. Uh-huh. And I have a tendency to be a bit extreme in everything I do. And sometimes I forget, it's just bloody sport.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. So even if you're chomping at the bit on a world enduro stage, you're a cross-country champion, nobody gives a shit. It doesn't mean a thing. It's just sport. And we're very privileged to be able to do sport.
I think I can totally relate to that. I used to get pretty angry about the things that I did when they overcame me, the things I like to do, and actually my job is also my hobby. So I've been mountain biking since very early 90s. You know, I think I did a race in Matlock in 89 or 90 or something. Really, wasn't it yesterday? And I've never been a big racer. And I get annoyed when I'm out doing my job sometimes, like with new people and riding my bike. And Jen, my girlfriend, actually said to me, she goes, every time you think like that, remember, you get to do this.
Yeah.
You get to do it.
Yeah.
It's like the amount of people that would love to do or be capable of or have the right state of mind or the physical attributes or just the support around them to be allowed to do what you do. And I go, okay, all right, you're right.
It's totally, and I know it is cliche, but it is such a privilege. And
I agree.
We should do these things to honour the people that can't. You know, we should push ourselves. We should, you know, appreciate and value these things because some people just can't. And that is a reason in itself to do these things. You know, people get hurt, their lives change, you know, people, I think of people, you know, women born into war, you know, they wouldn't even ever have ridden a bicycle. They wouldn't have even walked up a hill. And I never forget that privilege, especially living here. It's very easy to get caught up in the things you haven't got rather than the things that you have got.
The comparison again, right?
Yeah. But we've lost sight of real value. Like, you know, look back and look at the things that you have got. And then there's no shame in wanting more or aiming for more, but don't forget where you've been, where you've come from and what you have. You know, because that's pretty bloody
I'm
awesome.
a big fan of looking behind you.
Yeah.
So again, I think we talked earlier about the danger of you know, these memes and things. You can do anything, and you know, never look in the rearview mirror. It's these things have to have new. I think it's very important to actually look in the rearview mirror and go, look what I have achieved.
Where have I come from?
Where I am, you know. So even if you stop doing it tomorrow, realise that was a journey and you came from something to do that. And I think you're talking about kind of, you know, again, it sounds like a trope, like a cliche, honouring the people that can't.
Yeah.
I'm totally behind that. I lost two very good friends this year, where I it really brought it home to me as events do in one's life. You know, like people are injured and people are no longer with us. And every time I just would get annoyed on the Zwift, even just like I was just spinning for an hour and a half, I'd go, do you know what? This person would love to be here doing this. It's like, it shouldn't be my motivation, but it's definitely always there, like oil on water, just a thin film of, you know, I'm getting to do this.
Yeah.
I really am. And I can stop and drop it as well.
Yeah.
They can't even get started on it. And you being in that kids' home, not knowing that there is even a thing to be doing, and analogous to somebody born into war or somebody in like really extreme poverty, not actually knowing that beyond stepping outside the house, there's a whole other outdoors that is there for them potentially.
And I would like to share the value of it, because a lot of people, even if they are in a position where they can do it, don't know it's an option. And I think, don't be afraid to be shit. Like, quite often as adults, we're so afraid of looking silly or not being good at something. It's paralysing. And realistically, and you're going to see this with your job, Alan, you're going to pick up a bike, you're going to ride down a trail, and you're going to be bloody awful. You're going to be all over the shop, you're going to be braking in the wrong place, you're going to hit things, you're going to have a beetroot head where you're unfair. You're going to be an absolute mess. You're going to look as far from cool as possible. But understand that if it brings you happiness, being outside and doing it, just do it anyway. You're not going to be able to ride down New York, smooth as hell, you know, rail in the berms. You know, that is not what it looks like for 99% of people. And I think, scrap the fear. Forget about what anyone else thinks. Go out, have a go, mess it up, get up, go again, keep at it, and there'll be something in there for you. You're not going to be, most people are never going to be, you know, world champion athletes, but there is so much to be had in the trying.
Sure.
You know,
that actually brings me on to the Tour Divide. Actually, so we talked about racing and talked about the aggression, and we talked just before we came on there about wanting to win, and you do have that for good or for worse. You're quite driven that way, and you did the tour in 2017,
yes,
which is the year Mike Hall died.
Yes,
and I think he said of the Tour Divide, if you go for a pass or a fail, what is it? He said, I wrote it down. Pass or fail, Tour Divide. Pass or fail, it'll torture you. So if you try and race it and put failure sort of, if it constricts you, the result or trying to get it done, it'll kind of paralyze you.
Yeah.
Now Mike was a fairly experienced guy. He was a monster. He was so inspiring. Did you guys feel that? Or you can't speak for Lee, obviously, but was there that paralysing fear of failing that? Because I guess you did the London to Istanbul?
I did, the second edition of the Transcontinental.
The Transcontinental?
Yeah.
Was that longer?
It was much easier because it was on road.
Roads, yeah.
And on road, you have road signs.
Yeah.
But also, I was way more inexperienced. Right. So in a way, it was kind of scarier. And there were a lot more moving parts.
Right.
So I'll tell you a story that I've not actually told about the Tour Divide before. I actually stood on the start line, or didn't quite get to the start line, a couple of years before, maybe 5 years before. Right. So I flew to Calgary, I cycled to Banff, shot myself, cycled back to the airport, spent all of my last money on a flight home. When I arrived in Heathrow, I had no money left, so I had to cycle from Heathrow back home. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. My head was in the wrong space, and I'd gone to all the effort, I'd correlated all the money, and I'd gone there, I'd rode to the start line. And I thought, I can't do this. And I turned around and I went home. And it took me another 5 years before I was ready to face that start line again. And I was ready to go back out there, and I felt like the time is now. Yeah. Like, so I wasn't ready to be alone with myself in that space. I didn't trust myself enough, and I didn't want to be in my own head, because a lot of this long stuff, you are with yourself, good and bad. Mm-hmm. And when you're under physical pressure, all your bad traits tend to come to the forefront, and you have to be able to manage them. And the first time I tried to do it, I wasn't ready to face that.
How did that manifest then? Was that just a breakdown of like, I can't on every level physically, like I don't know the way,
I couldn't trust my decision making. I felt like I couldn't trust my decision making because my decision making was clouded with anxiety of, I'm not ready to be here, I'm not experienced enough. All the self-doubt that any person will have doing something new or big took over the logical part of my brain. And I scared myself into running home with my tail between my legs. And then I had to face everyone that I told that I was going to do this. So then I was trapped between two really anxious things. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to have to cycle home. And I remember camping in fields for days before I could go home and face it.
Oh, wow, really?
Because I was like, how do I even package what I can't even give an answer. I'm not ready.
So that was, that's quite early in your sort of doing that career. Had you done the Transcontinental before that?
It was...
or did that come after?
So the first ever long thing I did, race-wise, ultra race, was the Transcontinental.
Right.
And it took me 13 days to get from London to Istanbul, and then I did the Highland Trail. And I'd never been to the Highlands. Oh. And I went to Tyndrum to do this 500-mile race, and I spent the entire time, like, just with my jaw on the floor, like the Highlands.
You FKT'd that as well, didn't you?
I did, but I think it was like the second year I'd run or something.
Yeah, not that time.
Yeah, and it rained the whole time, and a friend of mine, Jenny, got stuck on the other side of a river for 24 hours, and it was just...
That's a famous dot watching thing, that when Jenny got stuck at was it Shenneval?
Yeah, Shenneval, in Fisher
Yeah.
Fields.
Yeah. What was she doing?
Well, because I only had a Nokia 3210, so I couldn't even check the internet. But looking back now, I wonder if I would have made the same decision of crossing that water when I did, because it was stupid.
I think my mutual friend Gary Thompson, he often talks about this appreciable fear.
Yeah.
In these things where you can... for those of you who don't know, the HT550, this crossing is way more than halfway through it. It's like two-thirds. So people spend the entire time worrying about that kind of thing. And I spoke to a lot of people do it, and they go, "Oh, I don't know about that crossing." It's,
Yeah, but sometimes it's ankle deep.
Yeah, exactly. So it could be a squall, it could be rain the night before, it could be it could be the tidal difference, and that's it. It's funny that you're almost inviting a problem that doesn't necessarily going to manifest. That it's kind of like anxiety manifest. What's round the corner? Who's going to take this from me? What is it? You're just creating a problem.
And I think it feels, that particular section of that route feels intimidating because you're surrounded by a cluster of some of Scotland's finest Munros.
Incredible out there, isn't it?
So you stand there and you feel like you are a million miles from civilization. The reality is it's not really that far. But in the moment when the weather's turned, or if it's dark and that water's up and there's no light at all, other than your head torch, it feels monumental. So I did the Transcon, and then I did the Highland Trail, and I think then I went for an attempt at the Divide, because at the time it was like the biggest, hardest thing you can do, and I just wasn't ready.
Yeah, I think, and this is me speaking as just a dweeb looking in from the outside, like London to Istanbul is populated with people and shops and petrol stations and hotels and stuff like that. The 550, like you say, it's a grueling race, but you're never that far away if you want to bail. You know it's the weird things. You know everything from the language. You're fluent in the language. You can jump onto a B road and do X, Y, and Z. There'll be a guy around the corner who you can steal some oil for your chain. Yeah. But then going to Banff. Yeah. And then looking at a line over that continental range, not knowing really where the stores are. So I at this point I should say. Because this is the last thing I watched was Divided. So if you go to Amazon, you can watch Rickie and Lee's film Divided, which is just a 25-minute film. It's shot on iPhones and GoPros and stuff. What was that? I'll leave it in. It's shot on GoPros and stuff, but it's a good wee insight into their journey over the piece in that race. What you'll see in that is like little snippets of how people do help and where you can get help from. Now, I'll raise the uncomfortable point that the past talk about winning and what have you, and even what Mike had said there as well, is you guys did finish that. Yeah. Lee dropped out technically, but you ended up disqualified.
I did.
At the point where you were sitting first.
I did.
And you finished second overall, unofficially.
Well, I had the fastest female time.
It was 8th overall or something, wasn't it? Yeah. It was really high. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Selling you short there. Yeah, it was top 10. It was 8th or 9th, yeah. So that talk us through that disqualification thing. I've looked at it. I was following the dots at the time, which I'd met Rickie briefly before then, but I had an interest in the Adventure Syndicate and used some of those girls as well. And I think it was harsh.
It was painful.
I thought it was harsh, but talk us through that.
Okay, so I had got to Breckenridge in Colorado, and at this point I was on my own. Lee had got ill and was going off to receive medical attention. And And I'd got to Breckenridge and I'd descended down a pass at probably midnight. And I descended down a pass and I stayed in a remote sort of B&B. And at 3 a.m, I got back up and I rode down the road. Now, a couple of hours later, 50k later, there is and bearing in mind it's probably about 4 a.m. now, there's a truck going up and down this road. So every time the truck was coming, I was hiding in the ditch because I was like, that is weird.
Yeah.
And that truck's going up and down. So he's looking for someone. And in the end, I thought, I can't keep getting in this frigging ditch. It's going to take me all day to get to where I need to be. So I got back on the road. The next time the truck drove past, it stopped. I thought, fuck. Like, right. So I stopped and I was like, I had my foot clipped in on my left pedal and I was ready to go if I needed to. And the guy gets out the truck and he's like, Rickie, stop. And I'm like, right, knows my name. I said, hey, how can I help you? like so
Very British.
Hey, how can I help you? Okay. So the guy says, look, you've made a tracking error. You came down Boreas Pass on the fire road. And bearing in mind, the majority of the Tour Divide is on gravel. So
is this a dot watcher or is this somebody from the actual
the guy who'd
local...
run this this remote B&B that I'd stayed at? He must have been a dot watcher.
All right.
And he had...
so he'd just been going back and forward actually looking for you.
He was actually
looking for you.
So the guy says, and I think he knew I'd made a mistake because somebody from the UK who's dot watching emailed him to check the tracker. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he picks me up. And I've come down the fire road. The majority of the route is on gravel. So it was very uncharacteristic that there was a piece of single track that contoured the gravel track down this mountain that I had missed. Because there are like 2 pieces of single track on the entire Tour Divide. Okay. So 4,200 kilometres, there's probably about 30 kilometres of single track. Mm-hmm. So the guy says to me, I'll drive you back to the top of the pass and you can re-ride the section you haven't done. So in my head, I thought this was a good idea. But in the rules, it says you can only get assistance for a medical or a mechanical emergency, not for a navigational error. So the chap drives me to the top of the pass. I find this piece of single track and I ride the single track and I re-ride everything I've ridden that morning. And then I think nothing more of it. And I carry on cycling. My main priority is thinking, well, I wonder if Lee's alive.
Yeah.
I wonder if she's got to hospital.
She died of sausage legs. It was a sausage legs incident, wasn't it? Yeah.
But, I mean, that bit's funny, but the funny bit is not, like, she was going purple in the face.
Really?
Yeah. And it was like, it was kind of like, it's kind of funny, but could be tragic. So I was kind of wondering, should I have left her? Maybe I should just keep going, and stuck in that dilemma. I thought nothing more of the nav error until we got to Del Norte. We rejoined each other, and then we kept going towards Grants, and then I get an email, or Lee gets an email, because my phone's off, because I'm like, fuck the world.
In it.
Turn it off. Yeah. This is an opportunity to be off grid. So she checks her emails and she's like, I got an email here from Matt, the race organizer, questioning like a nav error. And then it just dawned on me and I was like, oh my God. And by this point, we're like 600k from the end of a, 4,500 kilometre, 20-day bike ride. And we sat in the dirt and I cried, because I was angry at myself. I was like, we've come so far. We've invested so much money and time and energy, and I will probably only ever do this once. And I just hashed it up.
Was that days later?
Yeah, days later.
Days later. Yeah, I got the impression from the film that was. It was a decent amount of time.
It was days later, and I'd literally just crashed and fractured my kneecap as well. So I was having like a really bad day.
Which you didn't know about at the time.
I didn't know about at the time, but. Well, it just kind of went swollen and was manageable. And, 600 k's doesn't feel too bad in the grand scheme of distance, But after crying and being really angry, and responding really badly, we had some time to just digest. And Lee is very logical, you know, so she's quite like bigger picture thinking, you know, so I was right there, like with the heavy emotion of it. And it was quite nice to have someone who was like a bit more logical. And it was annoying, but I was really glad that she was there to be rational. And we finished anyway. And we just carried on.
I don't know Lee really, really well, but I'm in awe of her quite a lot. She's got this ability to be linear and speak and just she's like a adventure Spock.
It was really good. I needed those words at that time.
Yeah.
And I felt like we'd been through so much together.
Yeah.
It's quite an intense experience to share that, especially because we are ultimately both long distance cyclists in our own rights. And between us, it could quite easily not work because we're both quite opinionated and quite strong in our convictions. But actually, well, I feel, obviously can't speak for her, but I feel like it went well, regardless of the drama that unfolded. And I look back really fondly on such a gift of an experience. And then, you know, we got to the end.
I've always found Lee to be incredibly inspirational. I've looked up to her for a number of years. It must be incredible to be on a journey with somebody like that, somebody like-minded, regardless.
And capable.
And capable, of course.
Because often my role, because of my experience, means that I'm in charge or I might be leading something. Whereas I often find, you know, if I'm doing something, you know, with Leah, she's so capable. She doesn't need direction. You know, she can do it herself. And I think there's just not many people with enough experience to be at that point yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was 2017. And then we got the unspecified virus of unknown origin.
Oh, fun times.
So you moved down, you're now my neighbour.
Yes.
In Innerleithen, more or less. That was 2 years ago that you come down here?
2019 maybe.
2019, was that early, was it?
2019.
Well, nobody saw anybody for 2 years, did they? It was like, there's Rickie Cotter.
What's she doing 2019.
Here? So you've actually had a gap in all this shenanigans.
Yeah.
Haven't you? So has that just been would you think that was naturally, was that coming anyway, do you think? Or did COVID kind of poke that?
No, I'd had enough. I didn't like the way social media had strangled the premises of the ultra bikepacking world. I think the lines got blurred with people are trying to carve careers out of it now, and there were all of a sudden a lot of experts, and I felt like the best people and the fastest people weren't necessarily the people that were getting the respect anymore, because it was about how you branded yourself and sold yourself on the internet. I
think there's rarely been a type of cycling that had such a bell curve of popularity and coolness within such a short. I mean, you could cite enduro and you could say a skeptic could say, well, that's riding your bike up and back down a hill. That's mountain biking. So that was more of a brand. EWS branded that, and that was a whole big thing. But it took a wee bit longer. But bike packing, suddenly it's kind of like e-bikes almost. Like now there's a bike packing specific this and a bike packing specific that, and the whole sport took a. I have to agree, the social media thing, massive bell curve in just a couple of years.
The premise of promotion, self-promotion and social media is the total opposite of the point of bikepacking. The point of getting everything you need onto tiny bags on your bicycle and riding off to explore things is the total opposite of promoting it on the internet. And all of a sudden, all these experts with lots of things to say, like I got absolutely slaughtered on was it the Bare Bones forum after the Tour Divide about, cheating. And I made a mistake and I got the rules wrong, but hell.
And you got the kick for it. I mean, it's like...
If you know me, there is no point in cheating for me. There is absolute... I don't need to cheat because I can do the work and get to where I want to be. And that is how I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve.
I think that comes across even so far for our listeners, to be honest with you.
What's the point? Cheating takes away everything. Anyway, there was a lot of experts and a lot of opinions. So bikepacking racing for me has actually taken a turn for the sour. And I've had to step back because audaxing, right? Audaxing is so uncool. Okay, you've got...
Just explain that in a nutshell, what audaxing is.
Audaxing is basically free. Loads of people who are really old ride really crap bikes a really long way in really old Lycra and eat custard creams and kick your ass. Honestly, you'll have a 70-year-old who will do a 200k in like 7 hours on his Holdsworth steel bike with his Sturmey Archer gears.
I know those guys, yeah.
You know, it's kind of like nuts and bolts. Let's go for the sake of going.
Right.
You know, and it's so... Bikepacking has gone so far from that now. It's like, we're going to have these aerodynamic panniers made and we're going to have, you know, this, that and the other. And I find it really dull. It's the opposite of what I want. I want to go really hard, really fast, and the best person wins, end of, you know? And you'll notice with the Transcontinental now, there are a lot of rules. And looking at the rules that are there now, I'd have broken all of them.
Yeah.
And the example being that springs to mind is there was a chap. We were in Greece. It was 40 degrees. We were 100 miles from the finish. And the guy had snapped his chain. And he'd lost his chain tool. And it's hot. And we're nearly there.
Yeah.
And my friend Chris gives this guy a chain tool. Because the guy has done the graft and he's just lost his chain tool. You know, and that now is against the rules. And I think it's losing the ethos of camaraderie. Mm. You know, it's losing, if you want to share a can of Coke, say you're in first and second and you share a can of Coke with a person who's second, I think that's cool. I think that's camaraderie.
Yeah.
And
I hadn't actually realised that you couldn't do that within the cohort of riders.
Yeah.
So
and
you
really
and Lee
sad.
could share stuff because you were a pair?
Well, no,
is that right?
Technically we never should have been a pair.
All
so
right, okay.
unofficially, officially, we shouldn't have really started as a pair because we should have started as two individuals. So we were already sort of not really in the running of things because we were as a pair. But I'd argue that being in a pair is actually slower because you're having to ride to each other's needs.
Of course, yeah. So
actually being in a pair is... psychologically it's easier because you've got two people to make decisions. Physically it's slower. So yeah, I think...
So chain tool, sorry I interrupted you there. So this guy borrows a chain tool.
Yeah.
And did he get...
We didn't get disqualified at the time because they hadn't constructed all these rules. And I understand why you have to make rules now because it's so popular. But I think it loses the heart of the purpose.
Yeah.
You know, you're in it together. You're all on this. You'll all have a separate journey, but you're all in it together, and you're all trying to achieve the same thing. And then also, everyone's doing the Transcontinental with credit cards now, just staying in hotels.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh well, that's one way to suck the adventure out of it.
I think the event is just trying to protect itself as well because if you get, I mean, the silly things like. You know, there's like West Highland Way here, for instance. You've done that, right? Okay, you've had a pop at that as well. There's all kinds of things like, you know, people are so unsupported means what does that mean?
Yes.
So you get people holding every gate open for you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of gates in the West Highland Way, so you could gain minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes.
Yeah, true.
And, you know, potentially lots of minutes just by shooting through deer fences and what have you. So if you've got that, but is that they're not helping you ride?
Yeah.
Right. Is somebody like giving you a water bottle on the way past, or are you stopping and doing it for yourself? That's where FKTs get a wee bit grey area. Yeah. So these big things, I guess, these big monsters that aren't FKTs, I guess it's just a bit of protectionism. But I totally get the there's the big argument now about the spirit of enduro. And now it's gone over to the UCI, and there's lots of rules. You know, you'll know the sock length and what have you that the roadies complain about. And I think the worry is the spirit of enduro, that kind of stuff. You know, no problem with that whole thing going on. But it's just analogous to what you're talking about.
We have to be careful not to suck the life out of everything. you know, to
Yeah,
suck the joy out of it. We have to be careful to, you know, it has to remain interesting and fun and adventurous, and I think the balance is tipping almost the wrong way. And there's going to be a whole generation of people that never had the freedom that I had within this racing space. And that's a bit sad.
Well, that accessibility as well. So maybe if we talk about that, so if everybody's using credit cards and getting a good night's sleep, that suddenly becomes an advantage and almost like a barrier to entry almost, because you're like, well, these people are getting 8 hours solid or whatever, or 6 hours solid, and then they're going out. And then you've got, what used to be an enduro race in a leading getting gobbled up, and then maybe that's a barrier of entry to people that were going to do that. And you've got other examples around the country of the prices going up and the rules becoming more constrained, and the rewards being more, whether that be status or points or those social media clicks. Actually, it comes right back round to that comparison. Maybe it's like, I can't be that person.
Yeah.
I can't race to the point where I score points. I can't afford to do that and look like that online, if that's what the Tour Divide is, if that's what that race is. That's really, really difficult. I think so. People look at barriers to entry as purely finance or purely gender or purely poverty or purely location or race and that kind of thing. But actually the psychological barrier to entry through the comparison to what you think is happening in that thing is a real thing, and it scares people off. Yeah.
But I would ask yourself, if you find yourself in that space and you're looking down that barrel, what is it I really want? And if you want that thing enough, then it might take a long time. We live in a very instant world. But say, for example, okay, I want to do, how many rounds of the EWS are there? Are there 5?
Oh, I
7?
don't know. Let's just say there's 8.
Let's say there's 8. Okay, so say you're a 17-year-old and you want to do all 8 rounds of the EWS. Realistically, you are not going to have the money to facilitate that this year. But maybe what you could do is think, okay, 3-year, 5-year plan. I can make that happen. And then you can, improve your riding, and go step by step. And then 1 year, maybe do 1 and make that happen and break it down and then go bit by bit. And then eventually the 3 to 5 years, you might be at a point where you're like, okay, now I'm in a position where I can afford to do all the rounds. Maybe you might not. That's life. You don't win all the time in life.
It could be a bad example for me, because we need actually, in all sports, you actually need an elite event to drive that sport and to drive the aspiration as well. And you do need your guys at the top, you guys and your
But that time frame might make you understand whether you are that person or whether you're not. You
absolutely.
might get 3 years down that process and be like, do you know what?
Nah.
It's not for me anymore. I realise maybe that this isn't for me. But money's a tough one. Money's a tough one.
That would stop you going to Banff. I guess. What kind of money was in that in 2017?
Grandage, absolute grandage. Because you're taking a month off work, so your lost income plus your expenses is grand, and also you're eating out of gas stations, which is really expensive. Because you're eating out of gas stations because it's fast. So we're talking thousands of pounds.
We're talking 5-6 grand plus loss of earnings. Something like
probably
that,
5. Luckily, through the Adventure Syndicate, we had some bike connections and other various, connections that helped us out to make that work. But you are talking thousands. But that's why I work. I've got my normal 9 to 5, and I'm really happy to work. I'm really happy to. I feel like I was at a point a few years ago where I could have chased the dream. I could have chased the sponsorship. I could have maybe, eked out some sort of career out of it. But I realised I was having to sell my soul, and I wasn't willing to do that. So I thought, I'm just going to do my job, which is a painter. I am a painter. I don't even paint pictures. I paint walls. I'm just a standard, site painter. And it's so opposite to cycling. It's very calming, it's very quiet. You make things look nice and clean and tidy. And I'm willing to do that to be able to follow my dreams.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a narrative we should look at more. You know,
Yeah,
9 to 5 is actually okay.
That's another trope, isn't it? Like, you know, work to live, don't live to work, that kind of stuff. But there's, I mean, tropes and cliches come from somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, I agree with them or not. Well, so we've come through 2020. We're in or leaving. So the next big thing in my head was the Itera.
Yep.
So that is a swap from wholesale 2 wheels over to water, Shanks's ponies, and bikes as well.
Yes.
So give us a wee bit of insight into that, because that's going to lead us into the next thing that you're going to do, which we can have a wee brief chat about. So what is the Itera, first of all?
Itera is an adventure race, and an adventure race is multi-sport, and it's normally over multiple days with no sleep, as fast as possible in teams of 4. And I've always wanted to do it, but they're very, very expensive, and you need all the toys. So it's never really been an option till this point in my life, and I needed a change. So I met a team of people, and we went and did the Itera, which is a 4 to 5 day multi-sport that starts in Oban. So we were to meet in Oban on a set date, and we don't know the exact distances or the exact sports or anything until we're there.
So they give you a kit list and go, you're going to be using all this stuff.
Yeah, basically.
Not when and where.
Yeah, basically there's a set of mandatory kit, and you don't know until you're there what proportion of what you're doing. And all these things for me are horrible. Like 4 people in a team, Jesus, how are we all going to not kill each other? Not knowing. How do I prepare for not knowing? Not a clue. Sports I've not done very much of. Terrifying. I'm going to be shit. You know, all these barriers started popping up, and I was like, oh, it's just fear talking. Shut up. You know, it's just fear talking. Just go and do it. You know how to eat, sleep, or not sleep. I know my body. Like, my body can do this.
3 other guys, right?
3 other guys.
Had you met them for any real length before?
No.
Before then?
No, we'd done a few training weekends, and last minute our captain took ill, so he was replaced very last minute with someone I'd never met. But we looked very funny because Ian is 6'5", Jeff is 6 foot, and Cranny is still taller than me. So we looked like a set of Russian dolls. And I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. But
there is a photograph of you somewhere. I think it was on the Itera website, because they took a photograph of you, and I don't know if it was deliberate or not, but they lined you up in height order.
It wasn't deliberate. We just fell.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know exactly.
I looked at it and I was kind of like,
Russian dolls, mate. Russian dolls.
Yeah.
But that starts a spiral of self-doubt then, because you're like, okay, some of these hiking legs are going to be 40, 50 kilometres long. How the hell am I going to keep up?
Yeah, your gait is not the same as a 6 foot.
Yeah. So in my training leading up to that, I did hardly any bike training because I knew that was my strength. And I went to St Mary's Loch, and I paddled up and down in a kayak that I borrowed from Craig and Emma at Number One Cafe. I was like, Craig, can I borrow your kayak? My feet didn't even touch the bottom of his boat. So they lent me this kayak for like 6 months or whatever. And I just went up and down the loch.
Wow.
And running, I've always run.
Yeah. So
it was just a case of running further.
Yeah.
with a rucksack.
And how did your kayak training pay off in the end? Open water kayaking, we might add. So
the first leg, we were on Iona, a tiny, tiny little isle of Iona. We did a 5-kilometre run to the beach, and the first paddle was out into the ocean to Findle's Cave. And then from Findle's Cave, we then paddled to Mull. I had never paddled on the ocean. So I get in the kayak, Cranny is in the back, and he says to me, Rickie, how much sea paddling have you done? And I say, Cranny, this is my first time. And he says, well, put down your pina colada and start paddling. And I was like, oh, okay. And I think we made good time. We came out of the water maybe 5th or something. So it was a lot. He had a lot of work to do. He carried me a lot in that boat. But I felt like I would make it up when we got on the bike. I just had to trust that I was going to be
you
good
have a
enough.
reset moment
Yeah.
and be that
Yeah.
biker again.
Because within a team of 4, you're going to have someone who's a good biker, a good runner, and a good kayaker.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, just find your strength and be damn good at it when your time comes.
Well, you just spoke about the difficulty of being with a very capable person like Lee over something like that. So having 3 other variables in there
Oh, yeah.
is must be tough. Anybody can relate to that. And the Sound of Mull is the ocean.
Oh,
It
yeah.
doesn't look very far on a map, but
Yeah, I mean, I
decent
couldn't see
currents.
anything. I just paddled. I was just getting smashed in the face with waves.
the weather was.
Yeah.
There is a link to Divided and a link to that little YouTube video that your team captain made as well.
Yeah.
What you'll see there is basically iPhone footage of rain.
Yeah.
It was so wet by the look of it. You know?
Well, it wasn't too bad because we were going fast enough that we beat weather fronts.
Right.
So I felt like we didn't have a bad run. Like
Okay.
it wasn't too bleak in how it could have been. And it was warm because it was August.
It was August, yeah.
So it wasn't too treacherous, you know. But it was brutal. It was a brutal. I think it was just under 4 days. We slept for 6 hours in total.
550 miles or something.
550 miles in total.
You're paddling in the dark as well, aren't you?
Yes, but the final paddle stage got cancelled due to rough seas. And it was substituted with bikes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I got into final transition and I was like, oh, we're switching to bikes, marvellous.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's actually it's great when you hear that thing that you can do.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm good at that. I'm good at that. Me.
Yeah.
I'm away. But yeah, I don't have a great appreciation of that kind of distance in that kind of time. I've never been a big road rider. I don't go out and do tons or anything like that. I'm a mountain biker. I'm like 40k.
Fun times. Yeah, fun times.
You know, I'll go out and do the odd, you know, overnights and stuff like that.
Yes.
When I was younger, I'd do bigger rides and what have you. It's something I want to get back into. But actually, when you look at even just that little Itera video, when you see that line go around that flyover and you just see it wiggling through, and you're like, I know that place. I know that place. And you're like, I know that place as well. Fuck, that place is nowhere near that fucking place. And then it zooms out and you see, I'd encourage you, if you're listening to this, to just go and look at that Itera map and imagine what it's like running around and paddling and cycling that for 5 or 6 days. And,
I mean, so one of my favourite legs was probably one of the hardest legs because we were gifted such beautiful weather on the Ben. So we started at the foot of Ben Nevis on foot and we went up Ben Nevis. We scrambled up the ledge route, across to the top of the Ben, along the CMD, down into Glen Nevis, and then we did the Ring of Steel, more or less, and then down to Kinlochleven.
Yeah.
And that is like a highlight reel for the Highlands. And I think it maybe took us 12 hours or maybe 14 hours on foot. And it was brutal, but the weather was spectacular. And we are getting like a neat shot of Highland whiskey right there. That route was like any international athletes on that route, they would have spent the entire day with their doors blown off because it is spectacular. Brutal but spectacular, but the route was phenomenally put together.
The CMD is one of my favourite places to go.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Just alone. I've done it alone in every year for maybe the last 2 or 3 years, and I've done it before. I just absolutely love it.
You're seeing these places at stupid times of day.
Yeah.
So we came off. We were on Mull, and we came off. Is it Benmore on Mull?
Yes.
So we were coming off there as the sun was rising. There was a cloud inversion, and even though it was ouchy and we'd had a tough night, I was like, this is awesome.
Where you are. I did recall that actually. Because you got up onto that quite late at night as well, quite dusky as well. And I do remember that sunrise.
It's all pathless. They don't, basically, it's all map and compass work. So you have 2 navigators in the team that navigate. There's no GPSs. Mm-hmm. So Ian and Jeff were our chief navigators, and they are doing all this night nav on map and compass off-piste. I mean, you got to understand how skilled that is so that you're not wasting time going the wrong way.
Yeah.
You know, because you've got no landmarks. You're working off, you know, your altimeter and time versus distance. And I learned so much in navigating with those guys. Yeah. I was in awe. I was like, this is
good navigators
cool.
incredible.
Oh, yeah.
They'll take you to a dot and just that's not on the ground. It's right there on the map. But it's, you know, it's absolutely incredible.
One night he goes, stop. And we're all stopping. And he's like, the moon is on the wrong side. And I was like, oh my God, he's lost his mind. And he's like, the moon's on the wrong side. Rickie, go and walk in those bushes. And I had to walk through the bushes. And he's like, there should be a deer track or something in there. And it was.
Yeah.
And these bushes were dense.
Yeah.
And he had just clocked that the moon was meaning that we were travelling the wrong way. And I was like, oh.
If you know that, though, then that's, you know, because we all know the sun, right? The sun generally goes around the south of the sky for a lot of the year. And I mean, you or I would know that. You go, oh, wait a second, I'm heading the wrong way. But like the moon's a lot less, people are a lot less interested in what the moon's doing.
I know. And we just done 14 hours of like mountain biking through Glendessery. So we were kind of in a bit of a state, to be honest. And he was just like, just stop.
And then the moon was on the wrong side.
So I had utmost trust in him to keep us on. We made one navigational error the whole time, and I thought that was incredible. You know, navving at sea.
Oh, yeah, over 500 odd miles as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. So that was your first adventure race then, was it?
Oh,
your first mix-up?
Yeah.
So that's got you the bug. So brings us right around to this year, and it's the NIAR.
NIAR,
NIAR,
in the
Nordic
Faroes.
Island Adventure Race.
Yes, in the Faroes. Well done, mate.
Faroes.
Well done. You did better than I would.
I've not even got that written down.
Well
I have,
done.
but I never looked at it.
Hey, well done.
Yeah. So you haven't done that yet. So that's not something like the Itera. That's not something you're repeating or something you have any experience of, and that's a similar thing. So what's the lowdown on that then? How did that happen? Has that been a natural progression through people and experiences you've had on the Itera, or was that just something you looked at and then found a way to do it?
I've been badgering the boys to commit, you know, because what happens in adventure racing is a lot of people chop and change with teams.
The same team then?
Mostly the same team, apart from one of the boys whose dad's not very well, so he doesn't want to travel too much internationally, which is absolutely fair. So it's to Jeff and Ian, and then we've got another woman, actually, Nat, and it's going to be me and Nat. But I badgered them because I wanted to do more, you know. And everybody kind of decides what they want to do, and people just chop and change teams. And I don't have any kudos in that world yet, so I'm not in a position where I can be like, right, I'm going to take a team to somewhere. I'm still just dipping my toe in, so nobody's going to be like, oh yeah, Rickie, come on our team, you know. So
and that's a thing in that as well. I mean, I watch a lot of documentaries in adventure racing, and it's like a competitive thing. Get this guy over here and be on our team because he's a strong X or she's a strong Y.
It's a good slap in the face for me because it's kept my ego in check. Because I immediately want to go to the World Champs. I've got my eyes on Ecuador next year. I'm going to go to Ecuador next year, and I want to literally give it everything I've got.
Really?
But I'm not there yet, and it's humbling. And it's like, Rickie, there's better women out there than you, and you're going to learn. I'm going to try and learn from them. I want to surround myself with the people that are willing to share what they know, so I can be really good. But it's good to keep me. You can't immediately get to the top. It takes work.
Yeah.
And if you want it, and you've got a base of a skill set, which I feel I have, I feel like I can get there. I just need help.
Yeah.
So first of all, I've had to accept that I need help to learn the things I know. Yeah. And I've had to accept that old Rickie Big Balls over here is not like world championship ready yet. Yeah. And it's good because it keeps you in check. It makes you hungry. It makes you understand that, you know, you can be better than where you are. Mm-hmm. So for me now, this adventure racing malarkey is like, cool, challenge, set.
Yeah.
Goodbye wages.
Well, it shows a healthy respect for your own ability and that, you know, staying humble like that. But I mean, I've talked about this with other people as well, is that you need to pay respect to the people that have done it as well. Yeah. So it's really good to hear when you said about the woman winning the Wembo. It's like she was better than
end of,
or whichever way she used to do that. You just weren't. Yeah. You just didn't have that. Yeah. Whatever that was, you didn't have that, and that's really healthy. People could do to remember that when they're actually just in their the recreational spaces and to
Yeah.
take the pressure off them.
Yeah.
You know, is that just allow people to be better than you.
And also, don't be afraid to say, okay, what do I need to do? What are you doing differently? You'll find most of the time people will share that info with you. Like, there's a British woman called Nicola MacLeod, and she came second to me at the National 24-Hour Championships, the very first one. And consequently, she's gone on to be World Adventure Race Champion. So we've both split in a different way. Now, I met her at Iterra and we could vaguely recognise each other. And I thought, shit, that's cool. So I'm hoping maybe I can go for a ride with her. Maybe I connect with her. Maybe if I'm lucky enough at some point, I might get on a team with her, you know, and I want to just say to her, like, how does it work? Like, you know, how did you do it? What, you know, and I think, you know, she'd be the type of person that would be like, right, this is why you need to sort out, Rickie. You're rubbish in a kayak. It won't do. You know, you need to work on your climbing. You need to, you know, this is how you fit within a team personality-wise. So maybe you need to work on being more quiet, or, you know, something like that. But I feel like, you know, she's a resource, and that she'll be happy, I think, to help, you know, another woman hopefully, you know, climb up that way.
Yeah. Well, although there's different sports, I mean, she'll inevitably have faced some challenges that are similar throughout for all different kinds of reasons. So there's I mean, it's a hard thing that you're both doing, and as you constantly say, it's work. It's not a switch you can turn on. There's no filter.
And I love the fact she went on that. You know, we met serendipitously at the race, never knowing that we'd go off for 10 years doing totally different things, and then we'd come back round, probably because our personality types have similar traits. And now we're back here in this position, and it is a relatively small field of women that do adventure racing, because you need a lot of disposable income. You need to, you know, predominantly women end up being mums, so therefore they stay at home. So you might say that they might access the outdoors less because of their roles within families. So there does tend to be less, you know, a smaller part of women wanting to do adventure racing. So we have to, like, connect. Yeah, well, I mean, you might find her along the way. But is the Nordic one quite a well thought of world event, or is that like a European sort of, you know, I know the structure for mountain biking, this goes here and that goes there, but the adventure racing thing, you said there's a world champion? Yeah, so it's on the World Series. Basically there's an adventure race World Series with a whole load of events, and I believe it's the first year the Faroes have hosted an event. Okay. And then in October there's one of the events gets deemed the World Adventure Race Championship. It's a bit like cycling then as well. You get local organisers that conglomerate into a series, and one of those series gets the Golden Goose one year. Yeah, right. Exactly. And then this year that's in Africa in October, and then next year is in Ecuador, which is the long-term 3-year. Nice. The 3-year plan coming in. Right. Yeah, good. Well, like you say, it's about the long game, isn't it? Yep. We're talking of long games actually. You found quite a holistic way into this that's been driven by other people. I mean, into the sport, and then your own sort of hubris has there's that bong again. Over your own sort of hubris has taken over. Whether it started with that aggression and that determination and that need to intersperse with that need to win and not to fail and all those things that have brought you here. Where do you see the next sort of generation of genuine sort of aspirant sort of female adventurers, whether it be bike or foot, coming from? It's like in our sort of locale in Scotland or the UK or something like that. Given the barriers you've talked about, the finance, the maternal barriers, the potential work barriers, and it still being, there's some badass women out there. I've seen them all the time. But still a minority. Do you see a way? Do you see people coming through? It's so hard because money is so intrinsically involved in society now. I think for someone to really succeed who isn't stable financially or emotionally, they have to have such a hunger that it's almost detrimental to yourself. You know what I mean? You need to put yourself in such a hard place to get to where you want to go. How do we change those barriers? I think we need to ask ourselves, like, what am I doing to encourage the next generation to believe in themselves and step forward? What am I doing that is beyond me to maybe give someone a leg up? You know, and it might be a tiny act of kindness. You might give a bike to someone. You might give a light to someone. You might think, God, I don't use this suspension fork anymore. It's like a bit beyond what I want. Maybe we could share that. Or maybe I could, take a friend out and tell them how to read a map. Maybe I could, go camping. It's small acts. Maybe we could all do small acts to support somebody else.
Yeah.
To kind of give them a little leg up. I mean, taking enduro for an example, I mean, I don't know how you'll ever get to the top of that without dosh. Mm-hmm. It's not really about cycling anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know how. I honestly don't have the answer. But for me personally, I want to do a few tiny things that might help somebody else get to where they want to be, however that looks.
So that's interesting, because it can't be if you're driven by that identity. Whether you come from poverty, whether you're female, whether you're male and don't have any money, if you're driven by that identity, it's not necessarily a good driver to have. I think when you say do what you want to do, I think you've got to want it. So to be, I get the impression if you at that table, to come right back round to the guy across the table, as if you'd been forced to take the option even of the thing that you love to do, you might not necessarily have come to it.
Yeah.
You might have rebelled against it because it was something that somebody put, parents putting their kids into the swim club and going, you're going to be a good swimmer, or putting them in a mountain bike club going, you're riding bikes because you live in the Tweed Valley, or that kind of thing is a great start for the overwhelming majority. But there are those people that may have been you sitting at that table saying, right, Rickie, you're going to go on a bike and you're going to put a rucksack on, you're going to sleep in a ditch tomorrow night, which is your favourite thing to do. And you'd have went, fuck it, right. And you may have, ran to Wales on your bare feet to get away from it. Yeah. So I think overwhelmingly for all the people that are doing right, I often think that the want and the desire to do something at whatever level has to be there.
It does. You've got to believe in it. You've got to really. It's got to be. Like when I was doing the 24 and I wanted the 24s and wanting to go to the World Champs, every day, everything I did was something towards getting there. And it took a long time of deciding every day of doing these tiny things to get there. And in a world where we're so now, we want everything now, it's really hard to graft to a big goal. Yeah. So I just, like Ecuador, I'm not good enough yet, but I'll do the work every day and I'll learn something. And at the back of my mind, that goal is always there. And that is what I'm like slowly. It's a 3-year goal. And I'm going to get there slowly and slowly. I might not win. I might not top 10. I might not achieve my goals, but I'm going to get to the start line. And I'm going to do everything I can to get there slowly.
You've invested in the long game for a long time. So the long game is normal.
Yeah.
So it's that's your normal to sit back and build. Take knowledge.
But I'm hungry. I'm hungry for it. Yeah. So I'm willing to do the work, you know? Yeah. And I'm willing to like understand that this October I'm going to watch the World Champs in Africa and I'm going to be so damn jealous that I'm not there. But I understand why I can't be there. Yeah. And then I think back to my goal of thinking 3-year plan, Ricks. Yeah. Just sit back, watch, lessons learned from somebody else's lessons and then, ready yourself. But I will be jealous because I want to be there.
Yeah, well, so hopefully there's a juicy experience waiting for you in Ecuador. I can't even imagine what that looks like.
Me neither. It's not fun.
I've been watching the Eco Challenge again
classic.
on Amazon.
Absolute classic.
It just looks so amazing. I don't think I'd be doing that, but that I love to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm fine with imagining what it would be there. I live quite a dynamic life when I get the chance. I do a bit of bike riding with bags on. I'm not going to call it bike packing. I've slept in a good few ditches, like dozens and dozens of ditches over my time riding. I'll do did a bit of climbing, did a bit of this, did a bit of that, and I'm quite happy with that. And like I get to do that. And I think
it doesn't have to be extreme.
Yeah,
like it doesn't have to be
what you make it, right? It's all relative.
Yeah.
Listen, that's 2 hours.
Oh, you've got a lot to edit.
I think. I don't think I'm going to touch it. I think I'm going to leave it all in. So whether you like it or not, and whether it's your intention, I've got a huge amount of admiration for you, and you are. I don't want to force the role model thing on you, because I don't think that's fair. As for all the reasons that you've said, this is your thing, you enjoy to do it, but people look up to you, and I want to thank you for coming along and sharing your story. So
thank you.
Yeah, I'm not going to put your social media up there or anything like that. In the show notes, I really recommend people watch Divided, because it's a good window into just that experience, regardless if you're invested in the people in it. And the iTerra videos on YouTube as well, I'll put that in the show notes and the links to the races that you're going to.
And also, if anyone sees me and wants to chat.
Yeah, high fives in the street with this woman there.
Yeah,
absolutely.
If you want to have a ride and you're thinking about doing something, long or some bike, just come around for a cup of tea, just say, oh, Rickie, what bivvy bag? I love talking kit. Let's just chat bivvy bags, I want people to feel like I am accessible to speak to if they want. And
I think your social media is the dots. So we talked about dot watching earlier as well. So when that Nordic Island race comes up, there'll be spot trackers on, so they'll be dot watching, so you won't need any social media. So what you can do is you can watch the dots, you can go on to FatMap and Google Earth, and you can be there. So thanks, Rickie.
Pleasure.
Thanks for coming around.
Thank you.